The United States military certainly isn't what it used to be. From a once feared tool of multiple, virtually simultaneous invasions against the world just 3 decades ago, the Pentagon's ability to serve the interests of its satanic, pedophile, cannibalistic overlords is now increasingly challenged by its sheer incompetence. While it can still bully largely helpless opponents, the story is quite different when it comes to remotely capable global and/or regional powers. For instance, Washington, D.C. still lags far behind virtually all its opponents in hypersonic weapons. It has invested hundreds of billions in developing these highly complex systems, but has nothing to show for it. Nearly a dozen programs failed so far, producing nothing but a bunch of useless prototypes. In a desperate PR attempt to supposedly demonstrate progress, the U.S. Army recently posted and then promptly removed the images of its deeply troubled long-range hypersonic weapon, LRHW, better known as the Dark Eagle. The Pentagon is yet to explain why it removed the photos, but they were quickly disseminated online after the deletion, showing previously unseen fielding activities of the trailer that's supposed to house the LRHW. The photos were taken at an undisclosed location, but judging by the surroundings, it could either be somewhere in Europe or the continental US. This was the first public disclosure of any information on the Dark Eagle since War Secretary Pete Hegseth and his entourage visited the Redstone Arsenal in Alabama back in December. At the time, he and accompanying U.S. Army officials disclosed that the Pentagon was preparing to induct the LRHW, its first operational hypersonic strike system. The Dark Eagle is a ground-based missile armed with a hypersonic boost glide warhead, more commonly known as the Hypersonic Glide Vehicle, HGV. Due to numerous technological challenges, the LRHW is now at least half a decade late and is essentially a first-generation hypersonic weapon, coming at a time when both Russia and China are at least 2 decades ahead, if not more at this point. During the aforementioned visit, Secretary Hegseth was briefed on the projected capabilities of the Dark Eagle program, which is designed to enable the U.S. Army to strike high-value, time-sensitive targets at extreme distances. Unlike the American LRHW, all these Russian weapons are not only widely deployed, but have also been extensively combat-tested against the best Western SAM ABM systems. U.S. military sources admit that the Dark Eagle is yet to be deployed and is slated to become the first hypersonic weapon deployed for frontline U.S. service. In other words, the missile is not even operational yet, despite half a decade of rather embarrassing delays, cost overruns, and numerous launch failures. In fact, Lieutenant General Lozano himself confirmed this, stating that the weapon could theoretically reach mainland China if launched from Guam, Moscow from Western Europe, or Tehran from the Gulf region. Obviously, the key word is theoretically. If the LRHW were anywhere near deployment, the Pentagon certainly wouldn't be using such language. In the meantime, even North Korea and Iran zoom past these U.S. programs, developing and deploying operational hypersonic weapons. And to say nothing of Russia and China, both of which stand in a league of their own. Namely, while NATO is engaging in rather impotent saber-rattling, Moscow and Beijing keep upgrading their already impressive arsenals of hypersonic missiles. For instance, during precision strikes at neo-Nazi junta targets in NATO-occupied Odessa late last year, local media reported that either the KN-23, popularly nicknamed the Kim-Skander, or a new version of the Iskander was used. Military sources soon confirmed that the missile in question was the new 9M73S, better known as the Iskander 1000, reaching its target in less than 2 minutes. This makes it not only faster than the theoretical Dark Eagle, but also far more destructive, as it can still carry a warhead that's over 50 times heavier. Not to mention that Moscow operates far more powerful hypersonic weapons, including the Oreshnik, which outclasses the Dark Eagle in every parameter you can possibly imagine, including the price tag, which is higher for the American missile. Either way, even if the Pentagon somehow manages to deploy the LRHW by the end of this decade, it will still have a lot of catching up to do. On the other hand, the U.S. seems to be failing even in areas it traditionally dominated. Namely, the Navy's USS Gerald Ford nuclear-powered aircraft carrier suffered a major setback after its 650 toilets got clogged, flooding the $13 billion ship with sewage and forcing it to conduct an emergency docking in Greece. This will inevitably delay the planned U.S. aggression on Iran. Given this string of embarrassing flops, perhaps it's for the best for the Pentagon.